Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm Bill Hannon tonight with the co-host of Mariah Almonte and Ken Demers. And tonight we have Sylvia Weber, who is gracing us with her time to share something that a lot of people don't pull together: compassion and politics. So I'm just going to let that roll with Sylvia just giving a little background as to whatever got you to pull those two together.
Well, a lot of different things that happened. I am a nurse, and I do some lobbying for the Nurses Association and have been very active politically, not only statewide but nationally, in healthcare, but also environmental issues and things like that. And being a nurse and practicing energy modalities, I started realizing that one of the things that needs to be brought into the world is a greater sense of compassion, which is a healing energy, and that when you do bring it in, it really makes a significant difference in our entire life. I don't view politics as just government.
So you're looking at the empathy?
It goes a little beyond empathy.
Right, okay. But that's a good starting point, right?
That's a good starting point.
To be able to perceive how people around them are acting or reacting to what they say?
Yes. And also being very aware of your behavior and what you bring that encourages it or discourages it. Mm-hmm. And I look at politics as being part of life from the day we're conceived.
Right. I actually read that in your preface, and I thought that was very interesting how you were bringing about family.
Yes.
And all the way up. Could you just give us a little background as to what kind of pulled things together? You actually talked about some things that happened throughout your life.
Mm-hmm. One of the things is that throughout my life, you could see the politics. One of the things is that you see family politics, you see school politics, work politics, friendships. There's always a political arena. And in growing up, I would see the different politics throughout my life. One of the things that made a big difference for me was when my family came over from Europe right after World War II, from concentration camps.
Yes.
And from in hiding.
Yes.
And seeing the impact that all of this had on them and how it influenced their life and how they interacted with the world. Mm-hmm. And also seeing what happens when you come from a place of compassion and caring, and how it changes some people's interactions and helps them feel more accepted, more cared for, and also it helps people be open to more negotiation and accommodation with one another.
So instead of calling this book A Quick Guide, Compassion for Political Power, how could it have been interpersonal relationships? I mean, is that kind of comparable?
It can be.
Is that what I'm hearing?
But I was thinking more political power, because I was thinking more of bringing it into all areas of your life. And not only interpersonal relationships, but relationship with yourself, relationship with the environment.
Oh, I was thinking in terms of the relationship between you and the people that were trying to change laws. A
lot of people think that from the title, but that's why I explain on the back that it's really all of politics.
So you're using a very broad definition
yes.
of the word politics, not just political politics, but
right.
Community politics. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how
government.
to put it.
Right, broader than government.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, one of the things that I picked up in your book, I mean, just glancing through it, I was interested to see that you actually had been involved with an actual race, that you were actually running for office, that
That's right.
And I can understand where some of this compassion, well, actually, why don't you share with us how you incorporated the compassion from where there was actually some infighting and you actually felt like you were let down?
What happened was the first time I ran for public office, we had agreements with some of the other people, one of
Sure.
them who was running, and their support is that if they didn't win the primary, that everybody would support me, and it didn't happen. So being human, I had my usual human anger, disappointment, hurt.
Sure.
And then I needed to understand that, yes, these are the human responses, and how was I going to allow it to impact me? So that I have no control over other people's behavior. However, I have control over how I allow it to impact me and how I choose to use it in my own life for my own personal growth and transformation, including the decision I made to trust them. Because there were several people in my life who said, no, Sylvia, you know, you need to
Stand up for yourself.
stand up, and, you know, they might not do this. What if she wants to run again? And, you know, back and forth and everything. And I decided, no, I was going to do that. So part of my lesson was, yes, I had to take responsibility for my decision. And it was a wonderful experience. And it was
So that's how
great
you,
growth.
Right. So that's probably part of what the compassion, political power, is. You incorporated the compassion that you actually experienced
Right.
eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where does somebody find your book?
Well, they could get it through Balboa Press, or they could get it through any bookseller that they use. It's on Amazon, and pretty much on any bookstore could order it. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of joy writing it, or did it come easy, or did you have to really work at
Took
it?
me
or-
4 years.
It's only 52
It's
pages?
very, very short.
56 pages.
Well, it was quite. One of my strengths is not patience.
Okay.
No, that doesn't fit. I know you.
Right, I know you know me. I do have patience when I work on it, but one of the things is because I work full time, a lot of times I didn't have the time to write that I wanted.
I understand that.
And also sometimes, you know, having a family and everything else, crises come along, so you set time aside and, okay, somebody's in the hospital or whatever. So it took quite a while, and then there were times where I really had to sit down and confront, and I mentioned that in the book, in the conclusion of it, is I had to confront sometimes my own old issues, like, will it be good enough?
Right.
Will people make fun of it? And even though it was another layer.
Self-doubt.
Right. You know how we revisit our own issues
Sure.
because we're ready for another layer of growth. So I had a lot of layers of growth working on this.
We had a guest just last week who was, well, 2 weeks ago, who was talking about the self-confidence that we need to come forth and do things. And
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say the same thing.
Absolutely. Because when you write and it goes out into the world, you're more vulnerable.
You're feeling exposed.
Right. More exposed, more vulnerable.
And as you work through the different layers too, when you look back as to perceived hurts and whatnot, or things that you did that you don't feel comfortable with, you know, you get that emotional twinge, you know, your reaction to that, you know, so I think compassion is a big player in being able to work through this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you teach people to be compassionate?
Actually, you don't have to teach people to be compassionate, because compassion is
Make aware
not
of it.
only innate, but according to the research, compassion, there is a center in the brain for compassion. Competition is learned.
Okay.
Okay? So
Then
one
how
of
do
the
you make
things...
them aware of it then?
One of the things that I share with people when, is if you just get yourself quiet, focus on your heart energy. Okay, compassion comes from the heart, and it's the heart energy, which is significantly stronger than brain energy. Okay?
Right. It's very interesting.
It
Heart
is.
math is really
Phenomenal what
heart
they're
math
coming
is,
out
oh
with.
my God, it's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
What?
Heart math.
Heart math. It's
I've never heard
Heart
that term.
Yeah, I have, it's in
A
the
reference in there?
bibliography, a reference in there.
What is heart math? I'm sure everybody would
well,
like
I'll
to.
let you.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'd
You're
rather
the
hear
guest.
from you.
One of the things that the research is showing, and heart math is the research that shows the actual energy that comes from the heart when you focus on the heart and you're in a place of compassion. When you focus on that, the heart, I think, is 5,000 times more powerful than brain energy.
The actual energy, the actual output.
Okay, in my personal belief system, when we take a breath, we're breathing in the divine energy,
Right.
and the heartbeat is transforming it into the physical energy
That's
of the
right.
body. So I can kind of understand where you're.
Yeah.
Well, let
coming
me
from.
build on that and see how you have that concept. It's very interesting how one of the things, the energy of the heart actually scans your body on every heartbeat. So as your breath together with your heartbeat, as you inhale, your heart is scanning from the heart up through your crown. And as you exhale, is down to
Well,
your grounding.
that's the other half of it.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So basically what you were just saying, your understanding, I'm just trying to show you how the heart math incorporates that train of thought. But, it's just a different approach.
Okay, because when I'm doing healings for, say, a group of people, I'll use the breath point coming in from the divine, and then after we do that one, then I have them connect to the heart of the mother and bring that up and make a perfectly balanced energy for each individual person. With every breath you take, with every beat of your heart, you're breathing
Right.
in more and more of this perfectly balanced energy,
Yeah.
which is, you're saying it's 5,000 times stronger.
Right.
That's interesting.
The interesting thing also is that, as I said, compassion, love is innate. It is an innate quality of human beings.
Now, could that be what made us so successful with having communities, tribes, or whatever you want to call it? Because we cared about the other people in our group?
Yes, and also when you stop and think about it, when you're talking about compassion and everything, it isn't something that you have to learn. It's who we are.
But I think we can forget it easily
I think we cover it,
or something.
By
Right.
human experiences, by things that happen in our life. People don't trust it. They respond different to different things.
Sure.
And
Right, exactly.
And I think that's what happens. It's easy to it's like a remembering. It's easy to remember once you give yourself permission and trust yourself that I can be compassionate and deal with whatever happens to me in my life, because we do.
And I think ego plays a big part in that mask.
Yes.
The ego is putting up that shroud around you where you're kind of protecting yourself, but you're also cutting off some of that compassionate flow.
Right.
Sylvia, you're at the State House often,
Yes.
and I've been there quite a few times myself. And I have a perception, I don't know if it's right or wrong, that there's a lot of ego and self-interest,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of bloatedness. And I was wondering, which is the opposite of what you were speaking of, what's the opposite of ego we were just talking about?
The compassion. And being present.
Love.
with
Being
who you are.
present.
Right.
Okay, so if we were, could you teach a course or a 2-hour seminar to politicians that might benefit them?
I would love to, however.
No, I mean something that,
Yeah, and not all of them are that way.
Well,
And-
yeah, but the political point of view is what's in it for me.
Well,
And
first
you have
question is,
No, but is that
constituents
true,
that
or
you
is
have
it-
to answer to,
how many of them are lawyers?
quite a few.
Right, so they're not,
Right.
Well, one of the things, and, I know lawyers that
and
on...
we still have to get along with them and
Right.
still pass things through them.
And one of the things I want to share with you,
Absolutely.
because I feel, and again, this is a personal bias of mine,
Sure.
I feel that it is so much more important for those of us who do go to the State House. For example, when I did run for political office, I never saw it as I'm running against you. We're running for the same seat,
Right, right.
and we're presenting who we are, okay? When I go to the State House to testify or to meet with legislators or their staff, a lot of the staff are wonderful people. I go with the same thing, the view of I'm not competing with you, I'm not fighting with you.
So you're not
There
in
are
your
some
ego then.
things. There are some things I'm educating you for because they can't
Right.
know everything about everything.
Sure.
So and when it comes to healthcare or environment, can I give you a quick example?
Please.
Okay. So the first time I testified at one of the environment committees, the current chair wasn't the chair at the time, and they were talking about building codes and upgrading the building codes and so on. And you sign up, and all of a sudden he says, okay, Sylvia Weber is coming. Nurses?
Right.
What is a nurse doing
Right.
testifying on building codes? They had no concept. So that when I testified, I was viewing it as, I'm educating you how important these building codes are because so many buildings are toxic. There is such a thing as sick building syndrome, and I remember when people, they called it the Rusty Bucket, the Amy Ferran building when it first started.
Sure. Even
A lot of
right,
schools
right.
built on
Waste dumps.
waste dumps and toxic land. And I
Formaldehyde
remember,
insulation. And,
it was a wonderful education for them to realize that, wait a minute, there is a need for
do you
this.
feel they listened?
Oh, yeah. I really
To
felt
get
that
something
they
out
did.
of it? That's the important, that's why you're
Yeah,
there, justify why
that's
you're
right.
there.
And when I testify in any of the committees that this particular chair is in, sometimes one time he was starting to get up and my name was called and he says, oh wait, I'll sit down, I have to hear what Sylvia has to say. So because you build the relationships.
exactly.
and-
Are these paid positions, or is this just something that you feel you should do?
Well,
Is it like a
before-
job, I guess I'm trying to ask?
over the past, I think 6 years now, or seven maybe.
A while.
I'm now a paid lobbyist for the Rhode Island State Nurses Association.
Okay.
I do sometimes testify on bills
That you feel
or
strongly
hearings
about.
that really are not related to my work there.
Just
But
personal.
I just believe strongly in. Before that, I used to go up and testify, and it was more volunteer, or when I was president of the state nurses, I would go up and testify on different
Okay.
things. Yeah.
I mean, just being aware that these issues are coming up, I think is,
You have to track
I mean, you
bills.
have to,
Really.
that's a job itself.
Yeah, tracking the bills.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure the Nurses Association is keeping you apprised or letting you know when different representatives or senators are bringing.
Actually,
Bills
I do
forward.
that and let them know.
Also, in other words, you bring
I
it to
track
them.
the bills.
Oh, good, good.
So every day I,
How much time do you spend
at-
doing this in the course of a week?
It depends.
When they're in session, I guess.
When they're in session, sometimes it's 30 hours a week.
So it's like a second job.
It is, yeah. And when they're not in session, some weeks it might be just 3 hours,
And you have to read every new bill that's submitted so you can find the ones that are interesting to you?
No, what I do is I check the daily introductions, look at the bill title, and they always have a little bit of a synopsis, you know, like
Yep.
a sentence or two.
Right.
And then if it's something that it's somebody that I know tends to introduce things, or depending on the synopsis, like if it says taxes related to motor vehicles, I don't bother checking that.
It's-
Right.
You know, so
Right.
I narrow it down.
Like last week, they came out with, what, a couple hundred, I think?
Oh, yeah. But I have to look through every one just to the title and make sure.
To make sure you,
And then if it
you put
needs
your-
to, I
Now,
punch
do
it in.
you
and-
actually introduce legislation yourself on behalf of the Nurses Association?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And do you normally start that off in the representative side or the House side?
I usually pick one person in
Each side to co-sponsor?
Each side to
what kind of
sponsor.
issues would you be trying to get them to consider?
Well, let's see. Last year, for example, we introduced 2 bills. One was for end of life, medical orders for life-sustaining treatment. That people, even though the law passed, we're still waiting for the rules and regs to be done at the Department of Health. But what happened is once you have your end of life wishes,
Yep.
you know,
Sure.
it doesn't go with you everywhere. So if you're in a hospital
Okay,
and then you're being transferred to a rehab center,
Sure.
what you
May not
signed in
go.
the hospital doesn't go. So on the way, if you're in a ambulance and all of a sudden there's an
right.
incident or a crisis, they do resuscitate you, even though you say, no, I don't want to be.
you resuscitated, right.
So what we did last year was we had this bill in that people's wishes would go with them, whatever their environment is, and that they could revoke it at any time, which is
Sure.
already true
Standard
and
operating
stuff.
procedure, right.
Now, by coincidence, I think it was in Sunday's paper maybe, yesterday or the day before, there's an article in there about this issue over in India. They call it emptying the head or something like that, where if you're an older person and you get sick,
Right.
they basically poison you with green coconut milk, I guess, and it kills you, and it's just part of their culture.
Right.
I just found it very bizarre, but
Yeah, there's a lot of cultures. If you look at many of the indigenous cultures, when people reach a certain stage in their life, very often they will just go out into the wilderness
walk away.
and,
right.
and consciously
Sure.
cross.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
The Native Americans used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure other
Well,
cultures
they would
Oh,
do
yeah.
it when there was not sufficient food, or it was a particularly hard winter, and
Right.
For
right.
whatever
But even
reasons.
then, I mean, some people
Right.
would make the conscious decision that it's their time, they've done enough, they've done all they can do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even yogis will have, auditoriums where, their followers will come and they just sit and they just pass,
Right.
so it's just.
And
a
they're there to
conscious-
support them.
Right, and that's.
well, in the Tibetan, there's a practice, I don't know how common it is, that if you're desiring to pass, there's a particular meditation that you can do, and it takes like 3 days to sit and just dwell on that one thing.
I see.
And at that point, they pass over, natural,
You
just
create,
the
you
body
create
leaves.
that thing to happen.
The
right.
spirit
Right.
leaves, yeah.
Yeah.
I s- Go ahead.
What, did you finish with the other one?
No, I was just going to say, one time when I was working in real estate, a woman was selling her house and her mother was there, and the mother says, "I'm not leaving this house." The day the house was sold,
She
she
died.
passed over.
crossed it. Yeah,
So-
that's not uncommon.
I wanted to get back to something I read in the book about balancing opposites. How do you recommend politicians, and now since I understand that the book is written for politics anyway, which could be in a family, but I want to focus on politicians at the State House, which we are familiar with, how to balance opposing views. I mean, how can that be done, which may not be done now, and to honor each view?
Yeah. There's several things. One of the things that I mention and I talk about in the book is you need to put on the table people's views. And then you come up with you negotiate which ones, can fit together. How can we come up with something that everyone could live with? Might not be perfect. People would need to accommodate one another. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's what can you live with and what is in the best interest of everyone, not just the few. And that's one of the things that I feel strongly about, and that there's a wonderful book that was written by Nurse Peggy Chin. And it's building communities for the future. It's called Peace and Power, Building Communities for the Future.
Okay.
And she really talks about how do you negotiate. It isn't a matter of compromise. Because when you compromise, that's how you feel. You feel compromised and
Exactly.
you feel like you've given up
Exactly.
something that's important to you.
Sure.
But how do you negotiate? How do you accommodate? How do you get beyond, well, let's agree to disagree? How do you get beyond that?
Right.
And those are important strategies that,
Right.
no, you have to get beyond let's agree to disagree, because you'll need to come up with something that helps the majority of the people.
There don't seem to be many views in the United States don't seem to be interested in the majority's view. They seem to be more interested in their very narrow view.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're elected, you have your constituents to answer to.
That's right. I think that's what it boils down to.
Right.
But they
Except-
don't. They answer to their own
Sometimes-
personal, very
Right.
narrow view more often
Sometimes.
than
A
not.
lot of,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. They will present that. Now, before we continue, I'd just like to take a moment to thank the audience to have been with us tonight for Psychic Holistic Spotlight. And we're just going to continue talking along that line. Basically, you're looking at a democratic approach versus like the way the country was founded as a republic versus a democracy. And, how a democracy, people will vote and give and take, as long as it doesn't violate somebody's rights, which where as a republic you're able now to step away from that decision because it's crossing your rights as a person, as I look at it, basically your personal integrity. So
It's interesting because George Washington advised against political parties, saying that they would do more to interfere
that's right.
than to help.
Man ahead of his time.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But what's the alternative?
Well, there was a movement that came out of California that wanted to rewrite the Constitution so that it was more representative of the people.
Okay.
And it was a
let's-
very interesting movement, but of course it dissipated
Well,
for a while.
thank you very much, Sylvia.
Thank you.
And we'll continue this hopefully at another time. But I think we're just about ready to wrap it up. So I
And thank you for
appreciate you
asking me.
sharing the
And
book with
go to
us.
the State House and persuade them all.
That's right. I think it's very
Working
important.
on it.
Well, I think it's also
Yeah.
important for the people at the grassroots level to be able to
They
approach.
have to be involved.
That's right.
Do they have a view on the medical marijuana, out of curiosity?
Who?
The Nurses Association? Or?
Yes, in fact, we're nurses as well, nurse practitioners and physician assistants have been able to approve applications. They don't prescribe it,
Right.
but they were able to.
They okay it, then they give it to a doctor and he okays it, that kind of
They
thing?
bring it to the Department of Health.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, good. So they carry some weight with that then. That's good.
yeah.